Very welcome, everyone, to yet another enlightening session that we are conducting. Firstly, on behalf of Sphere and UNICEF India, I extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you who have joined the session and also are joining a session on education in emergency, where we focus on teachers as catalysts for building a resilient education system. According to the 2022 report released by UNICEF, staggering 24.1 million children are adversely affected by disasters such as floods, cyclones, heat waves, and emergency every year. In countries like India, where natural disasters like flood, landslides are all too frequent, children are affected in very various ways, and frequently and sadly, education is one of the service which is disrupted and also last to be restored. Then these disruptions in education have a very severe impact, like long-term and short-term consequences in children. And it is absolutely important that we ensure continuity of education during these emergencies. By doing so, we can mitigate the impact of these emergencies and provide children with knowledge and skills necessary to rebuild their lives once these crises subside and make them more resilient. And during these emergencies, teachers and other educators are one of the key stakeholders who can play a pivotal role as essential pillars of support, particularly in ensuring access and continuity to education in crisis situations. They not only offer academic guidance, but also they can provide essential psychosocial assistance during these emergencies. In a country like India and a growing frequency of disasters, it is essential that we all put more efforts in capacitating and equipping educators in our country with skills and knowledge required to further their role effectively in emergency situations. So, understanding this emergency, SPHERE along with UNICEF India is happy to hold this very important session to hear from experts as well as teachers on education in emergency, the elements and strategies of education emergencies, the ground level experience. And we would also want to hear from teachers who have attended as participants, your experience on the ground on situations like this. And we hope that this platform becomes effective in a way that we can build on more of these discussions, build on more ideas and advocacies on the subject so that we can ensure we have a resilient education and a better community. So without any delay, I would like to get into the session. So we'll start with our introductory session, and I would like to invite invite the Chief of Emergency, DRR from UNICEF India. He is an extensively experienced humanitarian and program manager specializing in emergency preparedness, response, and risk-informed development programming. He comes with more than 25 years of experience leading large teams and programs with various organizations, including INGOs, UN agencies, and donors. He has also worked with more than 20 countries across Africa, Asia, Pacific, Caribbean, and Europe. Sir, with your vast experience in the field, we are privileged to hear from you on your introductory remarks on the topic. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Actually, it's a real pleasure and an honor to join this session today. Firstly, I think it's an honor to join all the other speakers that I see lined up. So I am really not going to hog the limelight here. I'm looking forward to hearing from teachers and all the other actors across here. I'm very happy to see some other representatives, not only from education, but also looking at child protection. I see we're quite UNICEF heavy in terms of the speakers across this session, but at the same time, I think I'm looking forward to hearing perspectives from different parts of India and different roles across the organization and others. So firstly, I think the point of this session let's start with Teachers' Day. And I think that's a point to celebrate. I think that the role of teachers, personally, I think it's one of the best roles, best jobs you could possibly have on the planet. You know, that opportunity to really engage and nurture young individuals and collectively to really sort of carve out and help individuals, young people reach their full potential. But I think also looking at every individual as a potential leader for tomorrow. And this is really where the crux of it comes, because when it comes to emergencies and the need of all of us to try to mitigate the risk of emergencies and so on, we need better leadership. Let's face it, we haven't done the job well until now, or at least not well enough. So kudos to everybody for really sort of stepping up to organize this session. Thank you so much. I think the second point here is the right to education. You know, the fundamental right to education. Pause for thought. The right to education is there. It's written. It has been for many years. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we all automatically have access to education. The right to education basically means that every child has that right. Unfortunately, depending on where we are, which family we're born into, which community we reside in and are supposedly educated in, that really influences our ability to access that right to education. And I think all of us in this room, we are rights, or let's say we are duty bearers when it comes to delivering on that right to education. But are we actually delivering? Are we actually collectively, as a system, are we actually able to deliver in all the communities for those most vulnerable, for those hardest to reach children who most need their education to be able to step on and fulfill their full potential? So I think the fact that the right to education is very well stated in many fora across the world, we as a community, we have a responsibility on our shoulders to make sure that that right is actually being delivered. In the context of India, and I'm a visitor to India, I've only been here for 3 years, and there are many of you are much better informed of this. But in the context of India, India is hugely disaster prone. It's one of the most disaster prone countries on the planet. And many states within India are amongst the most disaster prone districts and communities on the planet. But I think we all know that India is prone to a significant number of natural disasters. We look at cyclones, we look at floods, very cyclical events. We know that they're coming, not if, but when. We know more or less where they're coming, more or less when they're coming, and we know more or less who will be impacted and how, including services, education, for example, case in point. So we know already where those vulnerabilities are, and we already know how to reduce those vulnerabilities. So essentially, as a system and as a community, we have the onus upon us to better organize ourselves, to prepare for and to respond to the risks that suddenly increase and escalate in the event of a new disaster, whether it be a flood or a cyclone, an earthquake, whatever it might be. But in the context of climate change, this is changing a lot. By that, I mean that the frequency, the strength, the magnitude, and also the geographical regions of where those disasters occur, all of those are increasing. So that's really challenging us. As if our job wasn't big enough yesterday, our job tomorrow is even bigger, and it's getting bigger all the time. No matter how much we reduce that risk, the risk is increasing faster than we can reduce it because of climate change, because of the impacts, more importantly, the impacts of climate change on children, on education. So I think with that, the onus is on us to prepare. Preparedness, preparedness, preparedness. We cannot underscore the importance of preparedness enough. As individuals, as a community, and most importantly, with children, for children, to better prepare the schools, the education system, to be able to sustain access to learning through the emergencies, and then to build back for a brighter and more resilient tomorrow, so that hopefully the next time round, these facilities, these children are less vulnerable than they were the first time round. So in India is fortunate because there is a very strong governance system here. By that, I mean there is a strong government in terms of policy, in terms of systems, in terms of infrastructure, in many places, not all. But with that, at least there is a system to work with. We don't have to start from scratch. There is a system to engage with, to work with, to plug the gaps, both short, medium, longer term gaps, to really identify where we can support and deliver according to our comparative advantage. And I think with all of this, and I'm deliberately not going into the role of teachers because that's not my expertise, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from teachers across the panel coming up. I'm really looking forward to hearing what are the challenges and how can they best be met. But to talk more about the essential, critical, the most critical role in all of this is the role of the teacher. And with that, I will let Aurelio speak a little bit in a moment about that particular point. But I think the idea of education joining up with other systems, other sections, other sectors, I think education is very dependent on children to be safe, but it's also a safe space in itself. And if we can really align the education with safe access to water, to sanitation, to health, to safe spaces for children to play and to interact with their respective communities, that would be a wonderful starting point. And to be able to see that as a sustainable something that we can deliver regardless of the presence of an emergency. If schools can be preserved as a place of safety and sanctity for children through an emergency, all too often we see schools being substituted as an emergency shelter. And that somehow renders education as a second priority. And I think that's a challenge. It doesn't mean that people don't need shelter. That's not at all the point. But is the school the right place to go for that? Or can we identify ahead of time an alternative shelter, safe space for the community as a whole? And the children can continue to go to school with a safe place to learn and to play. Some food for thought. With that, I think I've already overshot my time, but thank you so much for allowing me this time to speak, to share some remarks. I look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for highlighting about the right to education and flagging out that while there are disruptions during emergency, we need to focus whether this right is being accessed by all the other children, and also about the preparedness aspect, and also the term that you mentioned, the school as a place of safety. Thank you for highlighting that. Now I would like to welcome Ms. Aurelia. She is currently working as an education specialist at UNICEF India country office in Delhi, working on enhancing programs for out-of-school children and children with disabilities. She has been working in Middle East for past 14 years in development and emergency context. She has also worked in education emergency program in Amman at UNICEF regional office and Lebanon country office, where she was chief of field office in South and North Lebanon. Ma'am, we are excited to hear from you, given your experience in emergency situations. We would like to hear about what you think the role of teachers are in these crisis responses. Welcome, over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and pleasure to be there. I can't really see myself. I hope you can see me. The connection is not very good. But just reconnected to what my colleagues from Sphere and UNICEF were mentioning before, I think we need to commend and reiterate the key, nodal, pivotal, crucial role that teachers have in development context. And of course, when it comes to emergency, it's really even more important. Teachers are the frontliners. Teachers are, as Tom called them and called us, the duty bearers. They are the ones that make sure that, you know, the rights to education for children is fulfilled, that they are the ones that are the closest to children. So when it comes to a specifically emergency context, they are the one, and this has been experimented in emergencies, they are the one that they will know all the details about the children, where children are located, who is their family. So their role becomes crucial to collect information in an initial phase of an emergencies, but also liaise with the child to know if the child is okay, to know if the child needs extra support. Not to underestimate also the role of children to create that link and that kind of bond also with the community, between the school and the community. So liaising with parents as well. Their role becomes key. Why? Because a child, we know very well, a child cannot learn if a child doesn't feel safe. And specifically in the emergency context, the child needs more than ever any support to receive, to go back to that routine or to that sense of normalcy so that learning can really happen. Now, one thing I would like to reiterate. So definitely, as Tom mentioned, preparedness, preparedness, preparedness. We do know where floods are. We do know where cyclones are. So we need to make sure that schools, parents, community, and teachers are prepared enough. And preparedness has to be embedded within the curriculum so that teachers could, through the teaching and learning process with children, can also prepare. And it becomes an activity, it becomes an initiative throughout the school year. This is key because the more the school staff and teachers prepare, the less damage will come from the hazard. I'm considering here natural disaster hazards, as Tom mentioned. Another key point that I would like to reiterate also on the importance of teachers is also, yes, they are duty bearers for children's rights, but they're also rights holders. They are the one who make sure the rights to education can be fulfilled for children, but they're also the ones that needs to be supported. So in emergency, it becomes, and in preparedness, it becomes crucial also to assess which teachers has which specific skills or capacity to reach remote areas, to be flexible, to know specific, I don't know, one area might require to know a language, for example. Or, and so all of this work on assessing the skills, understanding, and eventually building the capacity of some teachers to be ready to go becomes really crucial. And in this sense, also teachers needs and require support. And so institutions, school education department needs to support a systemic capacity development for teachers, but also making sure that, you know, all the emergency protocols within the schools are clear, and specifically in the area, in the areas where, you know, the districts that are prone to any kind of disaster. Another little detail that maybe Sphere colleagues at a certain point can share, and I can share also in the chat, is that there are global standards. The Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies has developed these years global standards to respond in emergencies, and not only to respond. I mean, it includes the entire preparedness, response, and recovery. These are 19 standards. When it comes to teachers, there is the fourth domain of these standards, it's a micro area, is fully dedicated to teachers and education personnel. And this is to say, normally emergency somehow creates that sense of urgency to really start to do things better and faster, and to really start to look at what are the conditions of teachers. Are we making sure that the recruitment also is handled in an honest way? And also, are we giving the support to teachers in terms of coaching and supervision? Because we cannot just leave in the hands of teachers the full responsibility of again, on dealing of dealing only with children, which is the most precious mission on earth, but also how are we making sure that they can fully function in a very specific overstretched context. So I hope today in this session, we will hear more the voices of teachers and what can be done to really get better prepared and how to better support teachers in their work. So have a lovely session and pleasure being here with you today.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words. You very rightly pointed out the preparedness aspect of it, where now it's high time that we identify and map teachers and systematically capacitate them before emergency situations so that we have teachers capacitated to handle those situations. Thank you so much for your words. Moving on to our last speaker in our introductory session, we have Ms. Kitaki Saxena, who is the lead school education program from Save the Children. She is a development sector professional with 12 years experience in technical advisory and program implementation roles in the areas of education, early childhood care and development, child protection, etc. In her previous roles, she worked closely with Government of India institutions like NIEPA and NCRT, essay and research roles in support of education planning, research, and policy making. Thank you so much, Ms. Kitaki, for joining us. And we would like to hear from you about, what are some of the practical strategies for education in emergency situations, particularly in the context of India.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege and honor. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Please let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay. So thank you for such a lovely introduction. And I just would want to speak on, as you mentioned, the practical strategies that we were able to deploy in the Indian context. And a lot of the relevance that I speak today is from the COVID pandemic that had us to be, it took us by surprise, and we were trying to understand how we would reach out to our program areas and how we would be in connection with children. So, of course, the objective was that how do we maximize the
Ma'am, you're on mute. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're now audible.
So the idea was that how do we maximize the participation of all, and especially the disadvantaged at pre-primary till elementary level. This was the area that this is the age group that which we were working with. Bal Raksha Bharat was working with, and there was an international program launched at that time called the Safe Return to Anganwadi and Schools. And we were very clear that our objective would be that we want to have safe return of every single child to a pre-primary pre-primary section or a school. So we had to make sure that the environment around these schools and Anganwadi centers is safe for every single child to return. We were also very aware that our children that we work with and the families that we engage with do not have the means with them to have high-end technology so that online classes or online sessions could take place. So another strategy which we adopted was that it has to be low cost and no cost. So low tech technology, paper-based WhatsApp, SMS messages, these were the things which we employed, and this was with support from teachers because it was very important that sorry there. So it was important that when we engage with teachers, it's about how we reach out to the community and we engage with volunteers, youth volunteers, child champions. But the teachers were the first point of contact with them because they were the one most familiar with the community and most familiar with the children that we were trying to reach at home. At this point, it was also very clear that for a very long period of time, we will not be having children in institutional facilities. So whether it was an Anganwadi or school, we will not be finding children there. So it was important that we turn our attention towards homes and basically parents. Now, responsive caregiving at home became a priority for us. So all children, whoever we could reach through, whether it was our facilitators or the Anganwadi worker or the ASHA worker, we were careful that we have responsive caregiving practices being implemented by caregivers at home. We launched something called Masti Ki Pathshala. These were all community-based initiatives because we had to look for alternatives to school. And the community libraries and thela or cart libraries, rooftop libraries, and library in a box. These were all initiatives because we wanted to see that children keep engaging with learning in one way or the other, and they are in a print-rich environment. So just making sure that they don't the link of children with learning is not disassociated, and we find them constantly engaging with storybooks. We started this concept of having multiple types of libraries and in different formats being run by either the teacher or the volunteer in the community, so that children keep engaging with storybooks and there's a storytelling regularly happens in the communities. Innovative, gender sensitive, and no cost learning solutions. In this, we had teacher pedagogical forums. These forums exist even today. It's called the Shiksha Baitak in West Bengal and the Teacher Pedagogical Forum in Odisha. And through these forums, we looked at how we could engage with teachers beyond our program areas. And they are able to develop content for children, develop small packages which had workbooks, worksheets, small assignments for children, whether it is paper-based or it is, to be sent through SMS or WhatsApp. But it was about how teachers could engage with children. Secondly, we also had a helpline where we took initiative with Rajasthan government, and it was something to do with mental health and psychosocial care of children. Because it was important that we don't have children facing anxiety either due to the loss of learning or due to the anxiety due to non-preparedness to face examinations. So how would we deal with those such things? So we had a helpline called Umeed, and it was telling us about how children are wanting academic support, and we would provide it through a range of facilitators and teachers in the community who we chose, and we set some benchmarks for them. And we also looked at school teachers that they could spare extra time and support children, in learning while they are at home. The other things that we looked at, Story Ghar, this was a digital library of stories. It was also a collaboration with All India Radio. So stories were relayed through All India Radio in 4 states so that parents and children at home could engage constructively, talk about the story, narrate story at home, uh, understanding that, realizing that parents also have constraints of literacy. The other thing was that we looked at self-learning kits or, learning support kits. Now, self-learning kit was designed in a way that it was using no cost material. Material was always something which was to be found in and around a child's house. So nothing very expensive or something which can't be replaced. The other thing was that it was self-learning in the sense that it did not require much of adult supervision. So children could use the material in the self-learning kits themselves and engaged, being engaged in play at least for say a half an hour to 40 minutes in a day, so that they are engaging somewhere, with play. They are engaging and learning in terms of how they can improve their cognition. They look at their physical development. So we were looking at those areas. Then the happy rooms were created in schools. So this concept was about how teachers, we were concerned that teachers were just as pressured and just as anxious to return back to school and work as children were. So our concept of mental health and psychosocial well-being went beyond just providing well-being services or support to children. For us, it meant that well-being would also have to be for caregivers and teachers. So we have separate capacity building modules for each of these 3 categories. We looked at, engaging with teachers, in ways that help them to cope up with their work while at home, to, fulfill their multiple responsibilities, and also ensure that they are supporting children and coming safely back to school once the pandemic eases out and schools reopen. The other things that something we had to take care of was that we had to also do safety audit of schools. So safety plans, of the schools and Anganwadi centers, because we had to make sure that these are safer zones. There was a lot of advocacy done around this bit because we had to work with teachers to see that these schools are not used as quarantine facilities. These schools are not used for vaccination purposes. And while the children return back to school, the schools are absolutely safe for children to come back to, requiring every single facility a child needs to get back to learning. We also looked at some human resource development in terms of our education emergencies cadre. So whether it was school teachers, it was community mobilizers or volunteers, we were trying to bring in the aspect of education and emergencies and how to be always prepared to handle such emergencies in the future. We were also looking at training community members and volunteers on storytelling. So storytellers were promoted as people who would always engage in reading clubs, festivals, or reading camps in the community because storytelling was considered to be one of the key areas by which children's well-being could be ensured. We also looked at developing some strategic partnerships, so whether it was with NIDM or the SDMA and DDMA. We several universities, including Jamia Millia Islamia and also Jadavpur University, and these universities came forward and developed material and content for us. There were students who were volunteering because I mean, we had the limitations of putting our program people everywhere. So we required support from every single, member of the community and of students as possible. We also engaged in multiple networks. So whether it was the Right to Education Forum, the National Coalition for Education, or the forums created by NIDM and SDMA, because we wanted that education in emergency is not just about what one does when an emergency happens, but it was also about always being prepared for, what can happen in the future. So the pandemic actually taught us that things can happen all of a sudden. It can be unprecedented. So a pandemic that we had never seen in maybe in the last 100 years or whatever took us completely by surprise, but we have to be better prepared next time. We also looked at life skills for children and teachers because it was important that we integrate that with the curriculum. And that is how we're also able to impact the National Curriculum Framework and the National Education Policy 2020. So some of these things which have worked in our favor and have been very practical solutions. We were thinking on our feet because we hardly had any time to look at our program areas. And with teachers, they continue to engage on a capacity building program for them for accelerated learning support. And this is an ongoing program even beyond the pandemic, because now we are looking at tackling a learning crisis where we are saying that a child is close to at least 3 levels down from the time that they stopped coming to school. So, if a child is in grade 5, they're looking at a competency level of maybe grade 2. So, that's what made us form catch-up clubs. And we work with teachers to improve children's learning levels, especially in language and numeracy, for the primary grades. So this is how practically we are engaging with teachers to come over a crisis like a pandemic. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions, if any. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kataki, for sharing the practical works, especially that Save like Balaksha Bharat have done during especially during the COVID period. And we really appreciate all the work, and we look forward, we participants can look into the report and see what impacts that these programs had. Thank you for sharing that. Now, actually, we move on to our panel discussion, and I would like to hand it over to our moderator, Sarabdeep sir. He works at UNICEF as a disaster risk reduction specialist. He is an architect and urban planner with over 25 years of professional experience of steering development and humanitarian strategies and programs across the government and frontline UN agencies. Sir, we welcome you, and I hand it over to you to set the context and introduce the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Kezia. We're running a bit late, but I'm really happy that we have 5 or 6 leaders from the front line, leaders who believe in safe schools, education in emergencies, and schools schools being secure and safe learning environments. So we're going to listen to three seniors professionals and two most important representatives of teachers, one from Jammu and Kashmir and another one from Bihar. I will not introduce them. They all come with decades of experience. So I'll put their bios in the chat. But most importantly, I'll call upon them to make the presentations on specific themes. Each team has 10 minutes max. So Banku Bihari Sarkar, my colleague from Bihar, who's also a child protection specialist, along with Aparajita, who's a middle school teacher from Bihar, who's been working on Mukhyamantri School Suraksha Yojana. They both together, 5 minutes each, will speak about creating safe learning environment, particularly during the disaster events, and will highlight the importance of establishing safe and supportive learning environments and the challenges in doing such programming. So over to you, Banku and Aparajita.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank Sphere India for organizing this virtual meeting. And definitely it's a subject which is quite close to my heart and which we have been discussing, like the importance of establishing safe and supportive learning environment, especially in any humanitarian crisis. As we understand that every disaster has huge psychological impact on the minds of a child. They are in deep shock. They may also get traumatized. They also go into sometimes into deep depression, and they also stop talking, or maybe they are just looking or gazing kind of things. It happens because they actually normally they lose their protected environment, be it caregivers, be it parents. Even the parents and caregivers are during even in humanitarian crisis, they are also not able to provide required support or protection to the child. They may have lost their loved ones, or they may have lost their toys, books, pets, whom they are quite close to. So which actually definitely, if we are not able to provide any protected environment, it may also has other implications. The safety and security of a child definitely becomes a big concern for the be it parents or the caregivers, or maybe for humanitarian agencies. And sometimes we have seen that they also become vulnerable to violence and abuse. And even during Kosi floods, and we have seen that a lot of trafficking, child labor, and many more issues have cropped up also when we did some kind of studies on the impact of disasters on children. So hence it is very important for us to definitely create a safe and protected environment for children, so as to help them to actually coping with the trauma which they are going through. And even the child-friendly spaces also provide basically a platform for providing or reaching to the children with psychosocial assistance. They are also provided basically tools or methodologies through which they can actually vent out their sorrows, which they are going through, which they have kept in their heart. And sometimes if they play and learn with other children, so it also helps them in actually bringing back to the mainstream. I would like to actually stop and with a story. It's a true story of a boy during the Jammu and Kashmir floods in 2014. So what has happened that you may be aware that during the J&K floods in 2014, the entire J&K was flooded, and including the city of J&K, Jammu, where the family of the boy has to actually shift to their actually maternal uncle when their first floor was actually like submerged. So after that, the boy has been actually not eating and crying that I need my school bag and my toys, which is kept over there. But they said that we can't take you because there is hugely flooded. But boy actually kept on crying and insisting on parents. And then slowly, the parents got that, okay, it is very difficult for them to convince the boy that they can't take them. Then they actually took the boy to that place, and that place was still submerged, and it was very difficult to really reach to the house where that boy actually lives. Then they took then still that boy was insisting, and then the parent actually then sought help from the NDRF team. NDRF team actually took the father of the boy to their home, and then father actually somehow got actually the school bag and the toy bag of the boy. And then when they came back, then once they actually handed over that bag to the child, there was a smile in the face of the child, and this smile came after almost 15 days. But when they actually opened the actually bag, then they found that most of the books actually were actually have got wet or maybe torn kind of things. So that is the importance of the environment, living environment where a boy or girl is there. They are very close to their books, their pets, their toys, and if it is lost, definitely it has a huge impact on the children. So that's why it's very important for us as a humanitarian agency to create a safe and protective environment, learning environment during any kind of humanitarian actually crisis. And it's not important that we create sophisticated actually spaces. With all the resources that we have, be it small or big, we can create that kind of a space based on the context. So now I will stop and I will request my colleague Aprajita Kumari. She is a teacher as well as she is a super master trainer on implementing school safety program, and she is also from one of the most flood prone district, Gopalganj, to share her experience of creating child friendly spaces. Over to you, Aprajita. Aprajita जी, आप बात कर सकते हैं हिंदी में.
जी धन्यवाद सर, सभी लोगों को नमस्कार। और मैं बहुत आभारी हूं कि मुझे आमंत्रित किया गया इस विषय पर बोलने के लिए। और मैं बहुत देर से ये सुन रही हूं कि हम शिक्षक जो हैं, इन सभी आपदाओं में हमें फ्रंट लाइन वर्कर की तरह देखा गया है और हम कोशिश भी करते हैं। मैं अपराजिता, गोपालगंज, बिहार से, और मैं आज विशेष रूप से हमारे यहाँ जो स्कूल सेफ्टी प्रोग्राम चलाए जाते हैं, मुख्यमंत्री विद्यालय सुरक्षा कार्यक्रम, जो हर शनिवार को हम लोग हर आपदा के बारे में, जैसे हमारे यहाँ एक वैगन व्हील बना हुआ है पूरे साल का, 52 सप्ताह का, वो एक पूरा रूटीन है कि किस शनिवार को हम किस आपदा के बारे में बात करेंगे, इसके बारे में उसमें बताई गई है। पूरे बिहार के सभी स्कूलों में सुरक्षित शनिवार मनाया जाता है और हम लोग कोशिश यह करते हैं कि उसके 2 दिन पहले, या तो बृहस्पतिवार या शुक्रवार को, उस आपदा के बारे में, जिस आपदा के बारे में हमें बात करनी है, बच्चों को, और हमारे सभी स्कूलों में एक फोकल शिक्षक भी होते हैं जो उन सभी के बारे में उनको जानकारी देते हैं। और शनिवार को हम पूरी तैयारी के साथ उस आपदा के बारे में बात करते हैं, उनके बारे में क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, उनके बारे में जागरूकता देते हैं। यहाँ मैं आज बात करूंगी कि बाढ़ के दौरान हम अपने बच्चों को, समुदाय को, उनके अभिभावकों को किस प्रकार से सुरक्षित रख सकते हैं। विद्यालय स्तर पर हम उसकी जानकारी देते हैं और इसके अंतर्गत सबसे पहले हम यह बताते हैं कि सुरक्षित, जब हम लोग बाढ़ के दौरान बाढ़ जैसी स्थिति होने वाली होती है, अत्यधिक वर्षा होती है या नदियों का कटाव बढ़ जाता है या पानी तेजी से बढ़ने लगता है या गांव में पानी आने की संभावना होती है, तो हम बाढ़ पूर्व कुछ तैयारियों के बारे में बताते हैं। जैसे सबसे पहले सुरक्षित स्थान की पहचान कर लेने के लिए बताते हैं बच्चों को कि पूर्व से हम सुरक्षित स्थान की पहचान कर लें ताकि हम आपदा की स्थिति में या आपातकालीन स्थिति में वहां तक जा सकें। और परिवार के सभी सदस्यों को इसकी जानकारी होती है। साथ में जो विद्यालय स्तर पर जब हम ये जानकारी देते हैं तो विद्यालय के सभी बच्चों को ये पता होता है कि हमें कहाँ, कब, कौन से कदम उठाने हैं। तो सबसे पहले हम सुरक्षित स्थान पर जाने की तैयारी करते हैं। उसके पूर्व हम घर में बिजली के कनेक्शन ऑफ करते हैं, गैस के कनेक्शन ऑफ कर देते हैं और उसके पूर्व हम लोग एक 3 प्रकार का सुरक्षा किट तैयार करते हैं, जिसमें आपातकालीन किट होता है, जरूरी कागजात का किट होता है और एक होता है सूखे भोजन। मतलब कि अगर हमें जलावन नहीं भी मिल रहा है तो हम उन सभी सूखे भोजनों को खाकर कुछ दिन गुजारा कर लेते हैं जब तक कि सहायता नहीं आ जाती है। तो ऐसे हम लोग ये पूर्व से तैयारी करते हैं। अगर बहुत जल्दी पानी अगर गांव में आ गया है तो हम केले के थम से बांस का जो ये होता है, पेड़ होता है, उसको काट के राफ्ट बनाने की तैयारी यानी कि बेड़ा बनाने की भी तैयारी करने के बारे में बताते हैं कि केले के थम से, बांस से, जेरिकेन से, घर में जो तसले होते हैं या जो खाली जेरिकेन होता है, यहाँ तक कि थर्मोकोल, स्कूल बैग में थर्मोकोल को भर के उसको पीछे बांधकर उससे भी आप पानी को पार कर सकते हैं। ये है स्थानीय चीजों से उपलब्ध राफ्ट बनाने का तरीका। ये सब कुछ हम लोग बताते हैं। यहाँ तक कि जो पानी की बड़ी बोतलें होती हैं उनको भी एक साथ बांधकर, बेल्ट की तरह बांधकर, उसका बोतल का मुंह नीचे की तरफ होता है और उसको बेल्ट की तरफ बांधकर उससे भी हम पानी को पार कर सकते हैं। और सबसे ज्यादा जरूरी बात है महिलाओं एवं बच्चों की सुरक्षा। इसके लिए हम यह अवेयर करते हैं बच्चों को कि हमेशा समूह में रहें, बच्चे अपने माता पिता के साथ हमेशा रहें, कहीं भी किसी चीज के लिए जा रहे हैं तो वो हमेशा अपने ग्रुप में रहें, समूह में रहें। कभी भी महिलाएं, लड़कियां, बच्चे अकेले इधर से उधर ना घूमें, ना जाएं या बाढ़ के पानी में खेलने की कोशिश ना करें। तो ये सारी जो बुनियादी जो बातें होती हैं उसको हम लोग जरूर बताते हैं। उसके बाद जब घर छोड़ने की स्थिति होती है तो जब रिलीफ केंद्र में जाकर रहना पड़ता है तो ये महिलाओं और बच्चों की भागीदारी जो होती है वो हमेशा क्या होती है कि क्योंकि वो शारीरिक रूप से थोड़े कमजोर होते हैं और उन्हें उतनी जानकारी नहीं होती है, लेकिन जब हम विद्यालय स्तर पर इन सब चीजों की जानकारी देते हैं तो बच्चे जरूर अपने घर में जाके इन सारी बातों को बताते हैं। वहां क्या होता है कि जब रिलीफ केंद्र में जाते हैं तो वहां सबसे पहले हम ये कहते हैं कि बच्चों आप अपने अधिकार के प्रति, अपनी बाल संरक्षण के जो मुद्दे हैं उनके प्रति वो जरूर जागरूक रहें कि हमें सबसे पहला काम क्या करना है, अपनी सुरक्षा। उसके बाद हम उन्हें ये भी बताते हैं कि बच्चों आपकी जो पढ़ाई है, आपके जो पुस्तकें हैं, आपकी जो जरूरी चीज है उन्हें बिल्कुल ना छोड़ें, उन्हें जरूर अपने साथ लेकर जाएं। और बहुत
अपराजिता
सारे
जी,
जो
अब थोड़ा सा वाइंड अप करेंगे। हाँ जी।
जी 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 सर, मैं ये भी बताना चाहूंगी कि जब हम लोग पानी और स्वच्छता के संबंधी बातें भी बता देते हैं कि पानी को कैसे साफ रखें क्लोरीन और हैलोजन की टिकिया से, और खाना हमेशा ढका हुआ खाएं, गर्म ये कभी भी खुले खाने का हम सेवन ना करें। और जब भी तब अगर आपकी स्वास्थ्य खराब होती है तो तुरंत एएनएम और आशा दीदी से संपर्क करें। दूसरी बात कि जो पानी में डूबे हुए पोल तार होते हैं उनसे भी दूरी बनाकर रखनी चाहिए और खुले में शौच ना करें। स्वच्छता से संबंधित ये सारी जानकारियां हम बच्चों को जरूर देते हैं। साथ ही हम ये एक जो समावेशी शिक्षा की जो बात होती है, समावेशी वहाँ जो रहने की बात है कि जब हम बात करते हैं तो चाहे वो दिव्यांग हो या अक्षम बच्चे हों, सभी एक साथ रहें और उसके साथ उन सभी के साथ एक जैसा व्यवहार हो। ऐसा नहीं कि उनको एक अलग ट्रीटमेंट दिया जा रहा हो, या वो सभी एक जैसे ही वातावरण में रहें और अपने इसके प्रति जागरूक रहें, अपने अधिकार के प्रति, अपनी सुरक्षा के प्रति और अपने शिक्षा के प्रति। तो मैं बहुत धन्यवाद आभारी हूँ और बहुत धन्यवाद देती हूँ कि मुझे इस विषय पर बोलने के लिए आमंत्रित किया गया। धन्यवाद सर।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अपराजिता जी, आपने पूरा सिलसिला कवर किया और स्कूल सेफ्टी से लेके सारी वैल्यूज आप मंकू के साथ मिलके प्रिंसिपल्स के बारे में, प्रैक्टिस के बारे में। सो आई थिंक इसके बाद मैं जो इनवाइट करने वाला हूँ आनंद कानू को असम से। सो आनंद विल स्पीक अबाउट the community role. So schools are always based in the community. So there is always a very strong role for parents and the panchayats and the local governance structures, may it be in the urban context, may it be in the rural context. So over to you, Anand. Anand is my colleague from Assam. He again, I'll put his bio in the chat. So over to you, Anand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much to Sphere India and you for this opportunity to share some experiences from Assam. Though the centrality of my discussion is in community, I would like to basically put the context from this part of the world. And why context is important, because communities in a given context have different mechanisms of dealing with different situations they face. So first and foremost, in any given context, the idea of believing in the capacity of communities should be central. So, our understanding that when a disaster strikes, it is the community which is responding first. So that idea comes from that latent understanding of the capacity of community, that they have that role, that capacity, that mandate to survive, and that's how they respond. And education is one such package of service that unfolds in an emergency in a gradual manner. So the priority evolves from safety, evacuation, sheltering, arranging food, water, etc., to then thinking about education. And somehow, in the areas which are prone to frequent disasters, there has been an understanding that the needs related to food, shelter, water, or survival are of utmost importance, and things like education can come up next. However, globally as well as locally, now this is realized that education is also part of the integrated package of emergency response. The way we prepare for sheltering, evacuation, food before disasters, we should also have mechanisms to ensure that education continues in the event of a disaster. And in that, community plays a very important role, because when there is a demand, the supply automatically finds its way. So we will have to understand that how this narrative of demand from communities can be built. And that can only be done by putting education in the centrality of local politics, in the local development agenda. So when I say local politics, we will have to understand that communities in both urban and rural setup are now governed by their local self-governance structures, which are different in different states, depending on their capacity, depending on the way they are decentralized, depending on their capacities, how they have evolved. But without having their role before emergency in place, conceptualizing that emergency education would automatically evolve in the event of an emergency would be very unrealistic. And that is why we will have to identify that who are those leaders, be it the ward member, be it the panchayat member, be it the local religious leader, be it the active member of the school management committee or school management and development committee, or the parent teachers association, or the mothers group that are existing, or the SHGs that are existing in the community, is very important, because somewhere this agenda has to be placed, somewhere this narrative, the discussion has to take place. Now, why it is important? Now, coming back to our example from Assam, I mean, most of us who are in this call today, they know that Assam is known for its exposure to flooding. On an average, we get 3.9 million people, or close to 10% of our population, affected by floods every year. And the duration of flood varies in different locations, in different places. The duration varies, the frequency varies, the intensity varies. However, one thing that is common is that there is disruption. Along with the physical damages that the community, that the systems facing, there is disruption of service, and education is one amongst them. So with our partners, who maybe they are in the call, the Rural Volunteer Center, Mr. Luhit Goswami and his team, what we could do is that we identified an area which needed immediate attention, that we are facing floods every year, we are facing disruptions every year, and to imagine a situation where every school will be disaster resilient, every community will be disaster resilient, irrespective of flood coming or going, the services will continue, will take time. So in that interim period, what should be that mechanism? What should be that jugaad that would ensure that even if there is flood, even if there is internal displacement, even if people are staying somewhere else, there is some sort of educational mechanism continues. And with their help, with the collaboration of Assam State Disaster Management Authority and District Disaster Management Authority, we tested an idea of child-friendly spaces in relief camps, first started in Dhemaji and Majuli as an experiment, where we have kind of looked at education as the central platform for providing integrated services to children, where everyone can converge. So this child-friendly space does not necessarily means a physical space, but a space where integrated services can be delivered, where education holds the centrality, because child-friendly spaces are run according to a routine of different age groups. And suppose the age group for 3 to 6 years children are led by Anganwadi workers, and subsequently the next age group is led by teachers from primary or the secondary. So this mechanism was identified, this routine was identified. Given the structures and the limitation of relief camps, sometimes relief camps are in lower primary schools which may have only one room, one building. So can the courtyard of the school building be used for that purpose? Can there be some other nearby space be identified that till the duration they are in camps, a certain routine of engagement with children, along with a package of other services, the nutrition services, the counseling services, the VHSND services can take place. So this idea was implemented on pilot basis in Dhemaji and Majuli. It got political mileage because it was a new perspective introduced in the flood response mechanism of the state. It got different narratives at the state level, it got attention of central political leadership, and now Assam is one of those states which has a state level guideline which has mandated that every relief camp should have a child friendly space. It has invested on capacity of those frontline workers and duty bearers who would be providing that role, and more importantly it is also seeing the leaders and community leaders and their roles in making this happen, in making the practical arrangements happen when there is a flood in the state. So this is something that the state is learning and expanding, though there is a need, there is a scope for improvement, and there would be scope for improvement every year as we learn, as we grow. But that's a change in perspective which is currently addressing one critical area of gap that was there till 2019. So with this, thank you so much, and look forward to any questions that are being pointed to us.
Thank you, Anand. I think we're really excited to hear about the depth of education programming that's happening in Assam, and not only with civil society, but much deeper with government, both in Bihar and with Mukhyamantri School Suraksha Yojana in Bihar, and then the range of policies that have come in to support child-friendly spaces during the situation of displacement during disasters. So I think thank you so much to all of you. And now we move to the last team who are here from Jammu and Kashmir. We have Mehran Khan, who's the CEO and founder of Alpha International. And along with him is another teacher, Mr. Ramiz Sudan. He's from Baramulla in Jammu and Kashmir. So both of them will share the allocated 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes each. So over to you, Mehran. Mehran? Mehran, we can't hear you. Seems like you're muted. Ah, no.
We can't hear you.
Is it the problem is on my side, or maybe?
No,
we can't hear.
So maybe we can start with of the other speaker, Ramiz.
Mehran is not audible. So if he wants to go ahead.
Is talking,
Yeah.
but we can't hear him.
Mehran, take your time to sort out this thing. In between, I think we can ask Ramesh bhai to come in. No?
Yeah.
Am I audible
It's,
now?
yeah. Now
Oh
he's
yes,
audible.
yes.
He's
Ramesh
audible.
can go ahead. I'll follow Ramesh.
No, no, you can go ahead, Mehran. No, I would love to listen to you first.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. At the outset, I'll extend my gratitude to Sphere Academy for giving this opportunity to speak on this important topic. I'll share some experience from the field, the programs that we currently implement, and the role of teachers, as we've been talking since the beginning of this event, is pretty crucial and very important. Uh, One of the major disasters and the biggest emergency that we faced in our times, COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, I would start with that. Everything was affected, so was the education sector. And it was just because of the role of teachers, and the teachers actually took lead. I remember when everything was closed and we had COVID-19 lockdown, it was teachers who came up with this innovative idea of starting community classes. Then we supported that initiative, and the government also realized that this was very important, that the education has to continue, and education has to continue in all the emergency situations. So this was basically teachers taking the lead, and then us supporting them. And during the implementation of Jammu Kashmir whole school safety program, it's been more than 3 years that we are implementing this program. The government of Jammu and Kashmir also realized that the role of teachers is pretty important in continuing the education in any emergency situation. So the manual that was developed by Alpha International and UNICEF has been completely owned and adopted by the government of Jammu and Kashmir. They have printed the more than 90,000 copies that have reached to all the schools of Jammu and Kashmir, wherein the role of teachers is mentioned. But during the implementation of the program, we also realized, because we are in constant touch with the teachers about their mental health. So, and providing them psychosocial support, which was part of this. And this is why we have a detailed program for the capacity building of teachers, wherein we talk about their psychosocial, health, mental health, and psychosocial support. And then further, they go back to their schools and communities, wherein they work closely with the children. So we have these kind of processes inbuilt in the program. And something that we realized during the implementation of the program, which was the role of peer educators. I remember during the COVID-19 situation, when we started community classes with the role of teachers, the role of peer educators was very important. And this was only because of the teachers and the peer educators that we could continue the education in Jammu and Kashmir. So these are some experiences, and our colleague Ramiz, he would share more experience, because he's been an important part of this journey, and he's one of the master trainers of this program, who has attended all the trainings in the program. So mental health psychosocial support was really important, and the role of teachers in ensuring that the child, they come back to schools, and to initiate and to start with the community classes was the key. And then this program has been very successful, and the government has been very concerned, and they have really supported and being part of this entire journey, and they are taking it forward. And we are always working with them shoulder to shoulder. uh, Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I'll hand it over to my colleague Ramesh, and then I'll be happy if you have any questions. I would be happy to respond. Thank you.
It seems like Ramesh sir have dropped off from the call.
So Mehran, would you like to continue for a while?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Because I thought we had limited time. I was just concerned
No,
about.
but if whatever Ramesh was supposed to speak, if you could cover.
Sure, yeah. While Ramesh joins us, I would like to continue. So I was saying that Ramesh is coming back. So I was saying this was And a wonderful initiative, because since the beginning of the event we are talking about the importance of a role of teachers and their importance in the school safety and continuing their education. uh, this was only because of them that we could start the community classes and continue them, and their role in developing this Ramesh. Hi Ramesh.
Yes, hi, Maran.
So yeah, I'll finish in
I
one
missed
second.
up.
I'll hand it over to you. So I just gave a brief about how all this started, and the biggest emergency we had in our times, COVID-19. How this was the innovation from teachers that they suggested starting community classes, and then later how we actually formalized that till the lockdown was lifted, and how we
Mhm.
supported that initiatives, and how we ensured the continuity of education that had also come from the teachers. And the school safety manual, there's a whole section on the psychosocial support, not only for students but also for teachers, the entire
Mhm.
capacity building program. And Ramiz has been part of that, and he's been a great master trainer that he has attended all our trainings. So I'll hand it over to you, Ramiz.
Thank you, Mehran. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to listen to you. And I come in with on the note that COVID-19, uh, the disaster that I mean that shook the very foundations of how we look at emergencies. And yes, as an educator, I think continuity of education during COVID was important. And as you said that teachers played a very proactive role at times. Really, it was very beginning of the emergency when we were not aware how and what protocols to follow, but still we went on to with, as you said, community classes and online learning management system designed by our respective directorates and school education department. But yes, uh, during all this there was a flip side and a blessing in disguise that we started talking about emergencies, and we started talking to these emergencies, to children about these emergencies actually. And I have been really part and very passionate to work on how to create the safe learning environments for our children. And for me, COVID-19 is a recent thing, but for me, I think coming into the emergency, uh, 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 understanding emergencies actually began in the year 2005, which in the month of October we are actually commemorating the 18th anniversary of the massive and mega disaster that struck the Twin Kashmirs. And I actually did a small kind of research and took out some some data from the government in the Uri subdivision especially, and from especially from Uri, not to talk about Tangdar, that almost more than 50%, and you will be really surprised and shocked to know that more than 50% of the total deaths in the subdivision were those of children in the age group of 0 to 18. So, and I'm happy that I'm going to present also my paper, which I wrote, and I'm in the process of finalization in the upcoming event in IIT Roorkee on 27, 20 up to 29th September, sorry. So I will talk about what are the major takeaways of school safety program, which Alpha International and with UNICEF UNICEF taking the lead of the program. So, a comprehensive school safety manual, and how all the teachers from every nook and corner of the Union Territory actually we brainstormed and came up with the document for the government school, and not just public schools but private schools as well. I think it has reached to them. So we can talk about how we can ensure the safety. The Kashmir is no different to disasters, but talking and taking it down to the level of schools is really a big task, and we have accomplished it. And the government, the Department of Education, and along with UNICEF and the team lead Alpha and the members. So, being an educator, I think uh, our children, the physical impacts of disasters, yes, obviously we are being really able to monitor and check and document them. But one of the when we mention about the psychosocial well-being and psychosocial trauma of the children, this is something really which is hidden and which is not obvious. And at times, the caregivers are not really, as they are themselves suffering from one kind of disaster or other, so they don't really come to know so what affects and what impacts the children. So because it is silent, the children are suffering in silence since long. So this part, yeah, I think, and I will take the word out for you that I will congratulate the theme actually, the sub theme actually, which is the psychosocial, how to provide the psychosocial care. A teacher has to be trained, and this part needs a lot more really. We have to do a lot more in this field, that how to make children, because psychosocial part is not just catering to the academic needs of the children. It also brings up an aware and safe citizenry. And if children are safe, if children are able to really do some proactive job in the community, in the schools, so they are the tomorrow's leaders. So I think, and I was happy to really work with Mehran and with UNICEF, in fact, learning a lot from them. But I'm really able to, I find very the inherent happiness in me that when I'm given a chance to speak at any platform, at any podium where it's about the cause of children and their safety and continuity of education. So yes, thank you so much again for letting me air my feelings, and I'm happy to really work more and keep my passion alive. And Sarabjit sir and the rest of the team from Sphere India, Mehran and all the people. So thank you so much for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. You spoke from your heart. Your passion was absolutely palpable, and particularly for safety of children during disasters and as well as during the normal time. And I think all our speakers spoke so well. Ramesh, Mehran, Anand, Aparajita, Banku, and I think we now have a fairly good, I think, trust between all of us that education in emergencies is a service that requires some level of commitment, and we should together be more organized and be better prepared. So the call to action is preparedness, and education in emergencies doesn't happen by, it's not an automatic thing. It requires preparedness. And I just put some numbers in the chat. So we have about 1.45 million schools in India and about 9.5 million teachers. I think it's a big opportunity. So we got to have our plans in place to how to harvest this social capital and the technical capital of teachers to ensure that education in emergencies becomes a predictable service for children. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kezia, for bringing us together. Thank you to Sphere, and over to you for the next round.
Thank you so much, Sarabjit sir, for very effectively summarizing the panel discussion. So moving forward, I would like to hand it over to our last session to Dr. Ramachandra Rao Begur, who is working as an education program specialist at UNICEF, to lead our last session where we open the discussion platform and we summarize, figure out the way forward and recommendations. Dr. Begur, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. It's been, I think, really great sessions. I was extremely happy to see the narrative that's coming from, starting from the importance of right to education and the need for continuity of learning in the education emergencies. And the focus that also was spoken in terms of, the situations where we can do or we have to reach too hard to reach our most vulnerable, and the preparedness aspect that has come up, so significantly that it is important to that. And moving on to the role and importance of teachers and what teachers can do, especially also taking that example from the school safety program that has been implemented. Very interesting examples, lot of insights that has come up. and also on the role of community. I think that has been significantly felt, and what communities can do, and some of the innovative ways in terms of how child-friendly spaces, especially how education can take lead within that to have an integrated service. I think that's something very interesting. And last but not the least, in terms of how psychosocial and mental health. We are talking of teachers, we are talking of teacher support. We are thinking, are we thinking of them? Are we able to think of their needs as well? Because they do play a role, and it's important that we are aware of the situations in which they are in, and also the support that needs to be required. Very interesting, and also the bringing the psychosocial aspect interesting. What I'm going to do, I understand this is the first of this kind, the series of this kind started with such an interesting different thematics within the education and emergencies areas. Now there are a lot of points that have come in terms of that how we need to be coming together to make that happen, in terms of what needs to be prepared, how teachers needs to be supported as well, and also some of the examples where there could be a lot of cross learnings within what has been done or coming together. I would open up for some of the either as a question answer session or for that matter, moving forward, if we have to do some similar type of webinars, what do you think that's the need moving forward? So two aspects. One, if you have any questions or clarifications to the speakers also who have spoken earlier. And second, if you feel that there is something that we need to further discuss or want to know more, where we can find an opportunity in terms of having this type of webinars on a continuous basis, and we can have more discussion. Please either raise hand or just come in open. That should be more easier. I can't see it, but please just come in. If somebody wants to put in.
So there is a question in the chat box. Would you like me to read it?
Abhinav, I would like to know any existing solutions for creating digital infrastructure in remote areas in reference with education in emergencies. Anybody would like to take this? It's open to any of you. Either Sarabjit or the example which was given by school safety related. It can also either Banku, if you would like to come in. It looks interesting. Some of the work which you have done along with the teacher, even if you want to come in.
But there was one example on digital learning from Save the Children. So I think if she would like to come in.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we did explore the idea of having digital infrastructure, and this was for multiple reasons. But ultimately, I would say that the learning was that it had to be blended learning options. We couldn't have had very high-end digital infrastructures in communities, and the parents had their constraints. Apart from that, some of our research work also tells us that digital learning platforms, if they are created, there's also a high chances of their access being limited to, especially to girls and women. So those aspects had to be dealt with, and that is why when I was speaking, I was mentioning low cost, no cost solutions, which are more likely to be disseminated widely and used widely. Having said that, there was one curriculum framework which was developed specially for caregivers and parents at home. It's an early childhood education module. It's audiovisual in nature, and it's a two-way communication process where as we roll out the entire module, which is completely video based, there are small bite-sized videos which we roll out on weekly basis, And at the end of every week, the parents have to come back to us on their experience of working on that module with their children. So that is one. The other digital infrastructure I would talk about is Waliku. It's an application used in some states where we were trying to track attendance, and this was to do with the children who were found to be absent for beyond 2 weeks, and they were difficult to trace. And I think the primary benefit that Waliku has had, it's an attendance monitoring system which is digital, was that we were able to trace many girls and bring them back to school because they are more vulnerable, and the chances of returning to school was also much lesser than boys. So thank you.
So, Begur, would you like to tell everyone about Begur? You're muted, I think. Would you like to tell us about the Diksha platform? Can anyone hear Begur?
No, I can't hear.
Begur,
I was
you've been
thinking.
speaking to, but we can't hear you. No.
If I can come in on,
Yes.
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now, yes, we can hear.
Just testing whether the speaker was there. Okay. No, I was talking about the Diksha platform that's available with NCRT and the CIT more specifically. There are lot of elements related to the teacher support systems, lot of learning materials and course related also, which is be there. The same versions are also available at each of the state level. Actually, that is very critical. One can look at it. We could, I think it's already shared in the chat, the link around that. But it's also important that there is documentation related to some of the best practices, which I would be able to share with Spear, and also which you can be forwarded to everybody. That's one part of it, which has like low cost, no cost, the platforms in the event of such things, disasters, how multiple pathways can be utilized in reaching the most remotest and vulnerable. I think that is very critical. There are very good examples around that can be useful to look at it, both in terms of content as well as the process in which one can reach out. So we would be sharing that, and it will be available for. Banku, would you like to come in?
Yeah, on the digital learning, I think there are a lot of documentation which has been done on a lot of innovation which has been done during COVID. So I think Begur, it would be good also to share the link of those documentation, because I think during COVID, several states came up with several kinds of digital learning, even for remote areas also. And like in Bihar, we did Mera Doordarshan, Mera Vidyalay. So they were actually dedicated actually hours for each class on the DD channels. Then there was a Miss Call Do Kahani Suno. Then, as you rightly said, Diksha portal. So there were many innovations which has been done. Even there were some states which also did some blended training also, maybe online and offline kind of things. So it would be good to, there are some documentation which has been done by Education Department also. It would be good if you can actually share those documents or the link of those documents for the benefit of the participants. Thank you so much.
I've done one of them immediately, but we will keep sharing that. Thank you very much.
One more question in the chat, if you can take that.
Yes. How do we bridge the gap between the policies being framed for much needed intervention with education in emergencies and its implementation on ground in terms of lack of access to digital resources especially during disasters. Actually, as I said, I think the documentation part, which has been already done, which has compiling of several innovative practices during these times are there. But however, one important thing is, especially type of context we're talking, it varies from natural disasters to different types of disasters. Depending upon the context and situations, we do have, differential ways of reaching. And those differential ways of reaching in terms of different strategies, depending on the connectivity or no connectivity, that would have an opportunity to see which is effective, which is not effective, and taking the importance. The importance is some of the little things which we are talking about is one way, but it's important to see how exactly it could be two-way processes or interactive, or a sort of community supported voluntary type of things if it is one way, which can be the learning situations can be provided and also provides a very protective learning environment. Those are some of the good examples, but probably this is some of the questions which seems to be coming. This is also one point, also Sarabjit and our peer colleagues, that we need to look at bringing in some of these good examples in at length in more discussion, so that we can look at these different contexts that are there and what works, what doesn't work, and also practically what are the challenges. Still, some fields probably it needs much more building upon these areas. Thank you, Sarabjit, and then Bankut.
Yeah. So, Begur, activity-based learning was somehow highlighted by, I think, a couple of colleagues earlier, that during emergencies, art-based therapy and range of other activities can be undertaken, including sports, to not only address the learning part, but also to address the mental health and psychosocial support needs. Now, where are the resources on activity-based learning for our teachers? Are they on the Diksha portal? And if they want to understand the principles and the practices, where can they go?
Okay. Let me answer quickly. One is that at times when you go to the Diksha portal, you may get lost in that because of the ocean of resources. What we can do, Sarabjit, is we will create a folder or a link, where specifically on the sub-thematics, like you said, in terms of activity-based learning or joyful learning, if it is related to early childhood education age group, or actually more specifically with regard to the primary grades, or for example, life skills related to the upper primary or guidance, career guidance that may come later part of it. So it's already there. Probably we can pull it out in such a way that it is accessible to all the groups as well as people who can be them. One as a resource contents, but this also can be used in the event of disasters or natural calamities, where these resources can be very, very handy. And then depending upon the context, either in the child-friendly spaces which you spoke about or any other situations, this can be. Let us take this as also an action point for us within us, that we will pull together all the resources that are available to begin with some of these good pedagogical practices, and also with regard to the digital learning linkages and the resources which can be helpful. That's a very good point. Thank you so much for this.
Sarabjit sir, I quickly wanted to also intervene, bridging the gap between the policies being framed, not only limited to digital resources, but otherwise also, there's generally when we implement the programs in the field, there's a gap between the policies and the actual implementation in the ground. So one of the success stories that I quickly share with you is the participatory process we had from the beginning of the program, involvement of the stakeholders. For example, like, we closely work with the Department of Disaster Management also. The learnings that were during the implementation of the program were also shared with the concerned officials. And in fact, they were invited to this process wherein the teachers from the field, not only teachers, the community members, and the children, students themselves, shared the gaps that were between the policies and the actual implementation in the process and in the field. So that was very impactful and very effective. And the concerned authorities then, because we had all these stakeholders sitting together and then identifying the gaps, the ultimate purpose was to address these gaps and to have a sync between the policies and the actual implementation. That really worked very well, and that was the, you know, the result of that, the manual which was developed, and the coordination with other line departments. Like, we closely worked with the Department of School Education, but the Department of Disaster Management equally responded and was very critical and important department. So this process actually enabled this holistic approach and the involvement of all stakeholders. So I would say the involvement of different stakeholders, and to have this process very open and participatory, that certainly helps in bridging the gaps.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course, there are these gaps that exist, and there are processes in which one can really bridge those gaps. One of the example which you have given, there are some of the things which has been done. So these also take place, or put it in some of the best cases or examples. Banku, you can come in also. I would like people to also come in with some suggestions, or any of the areas which you would like to hear moving forward.
Yeah, just to
You can put it in the chat also.
Yeah, just to respond to the question on actually implementation of the policies which has been framed. First thing, I think everyone should know that there is a national school safety policy which has been framed in 2016 by NDMA, and after that, in 21, Ministry of Education also came up with a very detailed guideline on school safety. Second thing, at the state level, Department of Education as well as State Disaster Authority, they also need to be actually contacted so that you would be able to understand whether they are doing anything or on implementing school safety program or not. Because as per one of the, there was a case in Supreme Court, Avinash Malhotra versus state, where actually there is a verdict from Supreme Court that a district education officer is responsible for implementation of the school safety program in the district, and education department from every state report quarterly on the progress against certain indicators on the implementation of the school safety program. So it means that it is the liability and it is the responsibility of the state to implement the school safety program. Then since last few years, education department PAB, if you look at the budget of each of the state government, you will find that there is dedicated budget which is being allocated to each of the district for the implementation of the school safety program. So we can't say that if we don't know, we can't say that it is not being implemented. There may be implemented. Now you need to see that how can you contribute or complement or supplement to the program which is being implemented in your state. So there are actually policies, programs, implementation is in place, a dedicated budget is also in place. You also need to reach out and see what is happening over there. Thank you so much, Bigurji.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point which you said, but it's also important for us to make it much more aware of the people and also opportunities that exist. And this is also a good point as we bring it together different groups here, and also the documentation or the pulling of certain good examples together makes people to know around those things much better. Okay, so I know we have passed our 4:30 time already, 5 minutes. If anybody wants to come in just quickly to say, just to focus, suppose tomorrow we plan to think of in the next month or later on want to organize on some of the thematic within education in emergency. We want to hear more or anything which you want to say or put it in the chat. Already, if I can look at it, it's coming that something around school safety and security guidelines, which is very much critical. And also there were a lot of good examples around this integrated Safe Saturday one. I think it's so close. to that. And then also on the need on psychosocial mental health related, I think it's also wanting to know how does it make difference, or how does teachers take help of it? Where can one go around that areas? These are coming along with putting together the list of resources and documentations related. Okay, and stakeholders engagement is core commitment and skill that all are been using so well. Let us make the stakeholdership more inclusive, children. Absolutely, absolutely. When you are talking of the child and every child, all of us have this important role and need to come together. I think there are some of the opportunities or platforms that exist either in terms of adolescent platforms or Meena Manchas with regard to the situations that's in school situations. So, but we can still take those opportunities how we can build, especially in terms of preparedness, which we spoke. It's about the preparedness. I think these groups can play a big role either at the community level, the school management committees, or in terms of the adolescent platforms which can be there. Ramesh, want to come in before we?
Yes, yeah, just two quick points. I think one which you just mentioned a moment earlier that there has to be, we implemented the school safety program in a very comprehensive manner in Jammu and Kashmir, and it's going on. It has reached to the last mile, to the school, at least to the teachers. But I think we need to really sit and pause and really think about the care for the caregivers. Teacher is a caregiver and a service provided to the children. But I think what I can see on ground, and as an educator, as an independent researcher, that how my work, what I have been really listening to and understood about safety is being translated to the children. So unless we really think about it in a unique way, creative manner, that how to really care about the caregivers, because teachers, I don't think that there has to be some more emphasis on the care being provided to the teachers, to the educators, number one. And second thing is that quickly, it has been a year or two now, and we have digital platform. We have so many innovative things happening on safety on ground. So why not to really take a bottom-up approach and gather and analyze the best practices that have been in vogue in practice in school ecosystem. So then we come to know that what actually is happening in schools. So how it has been taken by children, how it has been taken by the teachers, so that it will help us refine the next move. So in the phase one, we did something for children, for the schools, but it has to really come up, and we have to really analyze and think of what went well, and how good it was with the students and the teachers. Yes, I think these 2 points I would like to mention.
Thank you. Thanks, Ramesh. I think, yes, of course, today we were talking about the role of teachers. I did mention in between that they do need support as well, and either not necessarily on the capacity, but also the support in terms of, as one of the examples said about psychosocial mental health support as well. So there are many other things that required to be looked in holistically. Today probably started with the role of teachers because we just celebrated Teachers' Day. But moving forward, I think we probably look to a systemic approach more from a systems level, second at the community level, and also some of the different agendas. So I think I would stop here and give it back to colleagues from Spare India. One thing I must tell you, thank you so much. It's been such a great, sharing experiences. And to me, it's the beginning of the new journey, which we all can come together and make this happen. As Sarabjit said, that we need to make it much more coming together as commitment and build upon to ensure that education is also part of the integrated package much more in a big way as in the event of any disaster or education in emergency as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and we would plan to continue to organize such type of discussion as a series, and so that we can benefit from each other and also see, how the preparedness part of it can be taken care to support the response mechanisms faster, better, and for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Begur. I know we are a bit over on time. So without any delay, I would like to move on to the vote of thanks. And I welcome Ms. Nupur Tyagi, who is the manager of program implementation from Sphere India, to talk with us.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, everyone. I'm just here to formally close the session. So firstly, on behalf of Sphere India, I would like to extend thanks to all of the distinguished speakers and panelists for sharing their expertise and insights. I would also like to extend gratitude to UNICEF India for their support and collaboration for this critical webinar. And we're especially thankful to our partners for mobilizing the teachers for this critical session. And I would like to thank Aprajitaji and Mr. Ramesh for sharing their experiences along with Hiran and Ketki. And of course, colleagues from UNICEF, we have Tom, Sarjeet, Dr. Begur, Anand, and Bankuji who joined us for this session. And of course, as Dr. Begur shared, that this is just a beginning. And we hope from here we are able to collate the critical information that was shared during the session today and also take the learning forward through a series of action points from. And as from today's discussion, we've also identified some thematic sessions that we can undertake in the next coming months. So we'll be doing that. And while we have identified some themes, we would like to welcome suggestions from our network and other stakeholders on any critical area they think we should be taking up next. With that, I would like to thank everyone. And again, thank you for joining us for this important session.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just closing it with what Sarabjit sir had written in the comment section, like there are 1.5 million schools and 9.5 million teachers in India. It is a big opportunity to advance education in emergency, and I really hope that it doesn't end in this session and we make deliberate efforts to bring in more capacity, to study on the existing best practices, to analyze it and to scale it up. And to all the participants, if you would like to organize training sessions, we are more than happy to assist you and also to collaborate with you. Thank you all once again for your time. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.